Dozens of ducks. We're in the farmyard at High Ash Farm. It's a dank, grey, mildish sort of January afternoon, about 4 o'clock. And Farmer Chris Skinner's just hoved into view. Chris, you told me to come and look at the ducks.
Oh, look, we've got some coming in. It's like Heathrow Airport here. They're coming in from all directions. And I thought we just had to enjoy this sight, sound, spectacle. Come some more in, another one coming in.
They sort of circle around the pond here.
They do, quite high up to start with, and I think you've arrived at about the halfway point of the arrival, and so we'll keep our eyes skyward as well, and there's probably about 100 there, and usually around about 250 come in, with later on a few geese, Egyptian geese come in, and some teal as well, which are about half the size of the mallards. Mallards, you can tell all the males, they're all sporting their bottle green heads at the moment, which they have on at this time of the year. And they're all busy quacking, waiting for tea to arrive. I'm just still scanning round because we've still got quite a few missing. They come in from every direction of the compass, so I watch carefully on the horizon. Some come in from the Broads, about 15 miles to the northeast of us. Some come in down from South Norfolk. They're quite some large lakes, fishing lakes, and they're fairly successful because in general waterfowl species have declined quite tremendously, really, all of them right across the board. Land drainage in particular, change of habitat as well, ploughing up the old pastures, and they're just so entertaining. And of course they're a sporting bird, and modern game cartridges can be specially designed for shooting waterfowl, and each year about 60% of the waterfowl that are shot, that'll include geese and other wading birds as well, would be mallard.
Oh, here comes some more.
2 more just coming in. I missed those. I don't know which direction they came from, probably from behind us. But the pond is quite a feature, and it's their centre point. That was dug in the early 1600s for clay, which is under the farm here. And the old farm buildings were made from it, and eventually it filled back up with water. Yeah, there's a group of 5 coming in, circling round. They're about 100 feet up at the moment. Now they're coming in straight towards us, feet out and webbed feet spread, and because there's still ice on the pond, they've landed.
Nice soft landing.
Yes, really good, isn't it? Oh, so impressive. And they'll always land just coming into the wind. So I turn round and look at the weather vane. That's coming from the sort of northwest, so they're flying in from the southeast. And that incoming wind in their face, if you like, helps to slow them down. And you notice they put their feet out. And here comes 2 more, great speed coming in. And at the last second they can weave as well. Oh, they've actually gone on the ice and slid into the bank the far side. I didn't mention ski. Oh, another 5 coming over the top now. You've arrived at exactly the right time, so you kind of have a taste of what I have. It's my pleasure every evening. Look at this. Straight towards us and gently down. Perfect landing.
I mean, ducks, a lot of people think they're clumsy flyers. They're not, they're experts, aren't they?
They absolutely are. And not only that, they're long-distance flyers, because it's about 8 years ago now, the British Trust for Ornithology did some ringing here, and we had quite a shock. One of the birds that was netted and caught, all released safely again, and all ringed, but one of the birds already had a ring on, and it was ringed 2 days earlier in Central Europe near Czechoslovakia. So they're quite long distance flyers as well, really powerful flyers. And I love when the teal take off from the duck pond here. They just go vertically up like a Harrier jump jet and then fly off, and they're, I suppose, even more attractive than the drake mallards. So in front of us, only 15 feet away, we've got a drake and a duck. The drake is the male, and they're paired up already. When you look through, you'll see nearly all of them are in their pairs, if you like. They've already decided who they're going to spend next spring with and share their genes with. So the female will start to lay quite early on.
There's a little squabble between two females there.
Yes.
Would that be about this mating process?
Yes, that would. Oh, yes, and a male and female had just come in. I keep looking at the flock and forgetting to look at the sky. Difficult, and for a man doing two things at once, that's not impossible. Two more coming round. So, as I said, most of them are paired up already. And if you move away from your mate, it will cause consternation. And they're quite feisty. The males will fight and tussle, and the females, look, not to wanting the attention of that male. She's with the front male and she's turning her head backwards. Oh, wow, that was fast. Oh, they're going to ski into the... Oh, no. Oh, to give everybody an idea, it's a very large round pond covered in ice still. And, oh, another 8 coming in. There they go. And at the back edge of the pond, because it's such a steep bank, it's 10 feet down, I suppose, there's a layer of flints from the local lime quarry just to stabilise the bank. And they're crashing into that.
Well, they're a bit surprised it's frozen because this is a hangover from some very Arctic conditions we've recently had, although it's not that cold today, but it must be a frost pocket down there.
Yes, it is down there. It's low, so it's colder. And we noticed that on High Ash Farm. At the top of the hills here, we have plum trees and apple trees. When they come into blossom, the blossom takes, whereas in the bottom of the valley it often fails. And we did mention Heathrow and the planes flying over. We've got the real thing just left Norwich Airport and heading off south. That's going down to the Canaries or somewhere like that. I don't know the exact time, but that's going to part away quite quickly, so we shouldn't be troubled with too much noise. Wow. So more have just come round, flying over.
They do this sort of holding pattern like an aircraft.
Well, they do. They descend. So the first circle round the pond, usually about 200 feet, 250 feet, and you're now going to be spoilt because I think we've got a dozen coming in together. Yep, I can see 3, 6, 9, 12 going to come in.
Watch the ice.
It's the ice. No, they're going to land on the ground.
There's more. Oh, they've made a mistake.
They've flown the wrong way, and it's crisscrossing. That's very unusual, and some more to come in as well. So I'm delighted you just got the timing absolutely perfect to have the mix of what's here and the annual sort of nightly spectacle. So eventually they will all disappear for their nesting sites. Some will stay and nest on the farm, and it's a delight. So incubation's about, perfect, right over the top of us. Big sweep round, 50, 60 feet up. They're doing a big sweep round to get the angle right of the wind. So incubation of the eggs, and there'll be 8 to 12 eggs in a nest, 28 to 30 days, depending on the weather. Ground nesting birds, and towards the end of incubation the female will pluck lots of the feathers from her own breast to help keep the eggs warm, and remember she's got to leave the nest once or twice a day to feed. The male will stay with her while she's doing that, but once she's incubating properly, he deserts her. That's the end of his duties, so to speak. And Mrs. Beaton, the famous cook, commented on Mallards' behaviour at this time of the year, because she said normally they're very astute husbands, stay with their wives, very faithful, but once the female is incubating, he loses all interest and then adapts uncouth behaviour. So he might have 5 or 6 other unpaired ducks, the females in other words, and it's in a way it's good that he does desert her, because we're looking at 2 quite close to us. The male is very, very smart with that green head. The female next to him is mottled brown, complete camouflage, which is exactly what you want when you're sitting on the ground, perhaps under a clump of grass, incubating, his genes and her own genes for the next generation of tiny little ducklings.
And that over thousands and many thousands of years is how they've evolved to survive.
Of course. And so it's good that he's not about. But just look at them sitting together. They're just side by side, that pair. Looks very sort of matrimonial, doesn't it, already?
Well, you mentioned food. They're here for the food, and I think that's where you come in here.
Yes, it is. This is why they're here. They're all standing there fairly patiently. And, look, more coming in.
Another half dozen.
Yeah, so we're, about 160, 70 at the moment. And normally, about now, it's just after 4 o'clock. Light's beginning to go. We would have a couple of Egyptian geese come in from where I do not know, but they sort of come in from the Roxham area. Very powerful flyers, another one of those introduced species. And funny enough, Egyptian geese nest on the farm, and I do have to scratch my head the first time I saw them nesting here. They were nesting halfway up an ash tree in a hollow. Geese nesting in a tree. And then the little goslings just tumble out however high it is, 20, 30 feet, and they don't seem to be injured. Anyway, I'm just going to pause for a second. I've got a big black bucket. Oh, more coming right over the top. There you are, that's the 200 feet
They
mark.
really do fly in fast.
Yes, look at that. And so they got to circle very fast, low wing beats, hardly moving, and they're dropping the whole time, 100 feet up now. Probably the last circle coming round. They know it's near tea time. Circle round, get the right direction, swing into the wind any second, about there. Right, okay, feet down. No, they're going to do one more. Yeah, they're just checking it all out. Oh, 2 have dropped off the flock and come in. See, you can't. Oh, 2 more coming in there at speed. Right, it's time, I think, because they've treated us to such a spectacle, it's time they had tea. And so I've got a ton bag of barley here. So no expense spared, and it's malting barley. Any listening farmers are going to pull their hair out because we could make good beer from this. It's spring barley.
Well, nothing's too good for your ducks.
Absolutely not. Lots of phrases as well come into our language from the ducks, and of course the cricket scoreboard as well. Out for a duck means, and when you get the 0 and it's on a cricket board at the end of the playing field, it's usually slightly oval shaped, the 0, out for a duck. So
Duck egg.
Duck egg blue, a very fashionable colour. Right, let's get the bucket here. And nice big bucket of barley. This is all that's left from a ton.
Delving deep inside this big...
Yes, several pints of beer here, so don't complain. I find feeding the ducks more enjoyable than getting a hangover. So,
Well, the ducks know that this happens. It's
Yes,
a
they
daily
do.
ritual.
they do, they're completely used to it, and I tap the end of the bucket quite loudly. There we go. And I had rather a silly call, which is a bit embarrassing. Riddicks! Riddick! Riddick!
And there's Chris scattering the whole lot, the whole bucket load down on the ground. The ducks obviously feel that we're a little bit of an impingement, so we back out and they come in.
And as why I keep saying, when you come to Ash Farm, what happens to the birds? They come towards you. Oh, what a sight.
And they're really tucking in, aren't they? And within not many minutes, there'll be nothing left.
No, well, I'll tell you a secret, which my son doesn't know. They get a second bucket in a few minutes' time.
There's no cost of living crisis here on the farm for the birds.
No, it is the cost of living because it makes me smile and I'm in touch with nature. And what a lovely sound to have right outside your house, just flying in, flying out again. So some of them will spend the night here and some of them will head off back quite a distance. Oh, that's my local geese. So maybe they've seen the Egyptian geese. which they will honk. They're the farmyard geese. So maybe those two geese from Egyptian, one of the introduced species, will come in with bright blood red legs, very spectacular, but they don't make a very nice sound, not like those mallard. So there we are, absolutely perfect.
And let's finish this section of the podcast, and what a great way to start this week's edition, by listening to the sound of many dozens of ducks tucking in.
Absolutely.
We're just motoring along here on the edge of one of the fields, and Chris, what have you seen?
Oh, Matthew, about 50, just under 50 fieldfares. Absolutely beautiful sight. We've had something extraordinary happen at the farm this week because of the cold weather. It's caused an eruption, which sounds a bit painful, but it's a cold weather movement of some of the thrush species. And we're just driving up to a field, and I'd brought you up here anyway because I was going to try and explain, not expecting to actually come across them because it's well into dusk now, and I've been learning with the trail cam that I put out, and just turned the truck off. Rats jumped out. There's an electric fence for the sheep on our left, so I hope he doesn't try and go through that because we will hear a serious yelp. But just out, about 100 yards out, which we're now going to walk to, is a clump of high-ash Bramley apples.
So you're feeding the birds again.
Oh, the ducks have the best malting barley, and I gather lots of apples, including all the windfalls in the orchard at High Ash Farm, and I store them in black bin liner bags, and they carry on photosynthesizing in the bag and producing carbon dioxide, which helps to preserve them. So although they're heavily bruised, some of them, they're absolutely perfect fodder for winter visiting thrushes. So if we just hop out of the truck, we'll walk across.
Still plenty of light, but it is getting towards dusk, and one of the biggest fields here. And Rat's in very good form this evening, running around.
Yes, he's taken off, heading in the right direction. Good boy. But that was a lovely sight, the silhouettes of the fieldfare. It's our second largest thrush, largest being the native one, which is a missile thrush, Turdus vociferus, or I call it Turdus vociferus because it's so noisy. Then the next one is the migrant species, the winter visiting thrush, which would be the fieldfare. That's number 2 down the list in terms of size. Really attractive birds, grey head, sort of cinnamon on the breast and heavily speckled breast, and when they fly away from you, a really distinctive grey rump, but it sounds very dull. It's actually a really beautiful colour grey, and I managed to capture some, and I'll carry on. Here's the little camera. Here's the apples, which were quite perfect this morning.
Oh, they're severely pecked about, aren't they?
And you can see the ones that are windfalls have, they're heavily bruised. They're quite brown and beginning to decay, and I think there's a slight alcoholic content in there, as I've obviously been on the ground. They've picked up the normal yeast that would be in the soil, splashed on when it rains, and then they start to ferment with the sugars in there, but the carbon dioxide in the bag will help just preserve it, and there's some almost good enough to eat. So even that good apple over there's got, oh Wes, look at this.
Quite severely pecked about, that.
It's nearly hollowed out.
Hollowed out, and the skin is almost full whole, sort of
Yes,
thing.
it is, and they've picked out the middle. But perfect, because what's happened, what causes an eruption like that, it's a cold weather movement. Both redwing, the small, I think that's about the smallest member of the thrush family, the thrushes we would recognise, and the song thrush as well, they're pretty small. There are some other members of the family which will surprise everybody, the thrush species. One's the nightingale, another one's a robin, and there's a third member which you is also called the mountain blackbird, so not forgetting the blackbird itself and the song thrush. It's the mountain blackbird, and it's got a lovely white crescent round there, or a gorget, and I'm just looking at these peck marks, but just to stop for a second, I will pick the camera up. Here we are. 2 nails in the ground to hold it vertically.
I think you've got a nice shot of rat, probably the last picture.
Possibly. Let's just open up and see if we actually managed to get anything today. It's turned on, which is a good sign. And there. And these help with the secrets. We've got 14 videos, I think. Let's have a look. Scan back. No, nothing there. No, we've missed them. But I'll keep trying, and I've already managed to get 4 or 5 lovely shots of them in the low sunlight, exactly where these apples are, and so it's quite disappointing, because I expected that they were then feeding as we now arrived.
And those redwing we saw, they've gone off to roost somewhere, have they now?
Yeah, they were the fieldfares that we saw. The redwing they're much smaller birds, and they're in the woodlands feeding in the leaf litter, and there's a flock of around 180 to 220. It's quite difficult to count them, and they've got this sort of russet red flange just under the wing, but when they're actually flying, how they get their name, Turdus iliacus is a scientific name. The underside of the wing is this lovely rusty red colour, and they also love rotting apples. But every morning I travel through the woods since that cold weather arrived, and that's what drives them across the North Sea. They start off up in Scandinavia, right up in the tundra, and gradually move down as their food supplies, bilberries, rowan in particular. They'll feed on all sorts of different seeds, and gradually they'll move down southerly across Europe, and they'll reach the North Sea that'll be the west coast over in Denmark, Holland, and even down to France, and then they'll come across, and what it is a kind of starvation movement. We used to actually shoot the fieldfares and eat them, as we did skylark in this. We've got a horrific past in terms of looking after our birds, and there's a huge enlightenment happening, which I'm thrilled about looking after, conserving these species that have these cold weather movements, and woodcock would be another one. And in France, some of these songbirds are still eaten, unfortunately, and in some of the southern European countries. But it is changing, and it just gives me hope. So there we are. So I will promise that it will be on Hyash Facebook. You'll be able to see both the redwing, and the redwing are the small thrush-like birds that have shocked me, because at 3 o'clock in the morning it was -3 down in the woodland, and they were feeding in amongst the badgers. The badgers were sort of rooting about, and the redwing were coming in and investigating the parsley in pitch darkness.
That's astonishing that they can manoeuvre around in the dark, because a lot of birds would just be sort of resting up.
Roosting. But the surprising thing with redwing and a lot of the thrush species, nightingale's another one that sings in the hours of darkness, of course, and quite terrestrial birds. But these redwing and fieldfares, particularly redwing, will migrate across the North Sea in the hours of darkness, and they communicate with each other with this high-pitched sort of whistle. In fact, some people used to call it the whistling thrush, because they have this high-pitched contact call between them, and they'll come to our shores. But they are beautiful, stunning little birds. So if you see a few in your garden, if there's more than 2 or 3, they are redwing. If there's just 1 or perhaps 2, and it's just got the speckled breast without the russet on the edge of the wing and on the underwing, then those would be the redwing. So there we are, how to tell the difference. But a field full of thrushes at this time of the year, which we just saw when we drove up here. They're the fieldfares, much larger, and really, really beautiful, beautiful birds. You will notice that on the video, so fingers crossed, High Ash Farm Facebook, and you sort of steer yourself through. You can do all this finger twiddling business, which I can't do. Look at my fingers, they look more like sausages.
I tell you what, it was impressive watching you operate the trail cam.
Yes, oh yeah, I've learned how to do that. I don't know, I can set it up, I get the focal distance right, and just look, everybody's heading home from work now. Training ground on Hall Road is lighting the sky up with all the floodlights.
Yes, five-a-side football, and there is one of the main roads in Norfolk, the A47, nose to tail traffic, and here we are within sight in the middle of the countryside.
Yes, absolutely beautiful. The peace, the tranquility, and the smile on my face every week. My main love is to share the Norfolk countryside. It belongs to everybody after all, and so the Norfolk motto is not get off my land, but come and enjoy Norfolk's beautiful country landscape and wildlife.
Well, it really is getting dark, and we're back in the farmyard just to round off the podcast this week, and as promised, Chris is giving the ducks a second helping.
My son's not looking, thank goodness. I could get chastised for this. Wasting good barley. Here they are.
And here they are. Oh my word, there's even more.
Even more.
No geese.
No, they haven't arrived. This is the first time. They can still come in, although it's nearly dark. Right, we'll discard. Oh, more hens just flying across the ice, landing on the other side of the pond. Right.
Well, all the earlier food's gone. Now some more.
And yet again, coming towards us.
They come in their droves.
Oh, look at this.
They know the form.
You're around about the 200 there now.
Well, it's been great fun seeing the ducks, and always great fun to read your emails. And the first one this week comes from Elizabeth Butcher, who's been to the farm, also came to see us at the Sheringham Little Theatre before Christmas.
Yes.
And in fact, we've got another stage show coming up.
I think it's March the 23rd at Fisher Theatre at Bungay, and it's getting pretty well booked out. I'm astonished. Normally, if I do talks, everybody gets a front row seat.
You're the Laurence Olivier of the Norfolk Theatre.
It's called the Norfolk mottos do different, yes, so I'm learning to communicate, but also we've got some lovely videos from the farm, including a drone footage flying over the top of the bluebells, and also some amusing stories about my terrier. So come along to the Fisher Theatre at Bungay, March, I think it's the 23rd, it's a Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Well, Elizabeth went along to the Sheringham Theatre and said she really enjoyed it. But she says, on the podcast, you talked about the gulls coming down and eating the food you put out for the geese, and the geese running away as they don't like the gulls. I just wondered, if the gulls are eating the food, what do the geese eat and when? Do you feed them under cover somewhere?
No, I don't, because they can fly off, and they're wild birds, really, even though they spend a great deal of time in the farmyard. So they have to join in with the mallard, but they do get a special treat early in the morning. Matthew, it's almost dusk.
I can see your geese over there.
They're over there, but there's a robin. There it is, and it's swearing at us. We're being ticked off.
Hear the little chip chip.
Yes, ducking and diving. Yes. Oh, perfect. There we are. They're swear words, so I don't think I won't interpret for you.
Maureen Lister, thank you for your email. I was surprised to see these primroses whilst walking near Long Stratton in Norfolk. Photographed on the last day of the year. The plant was protected from the wind by some tall tussocks of grass, but still a little early, surely. And there's the photograph, primroses, on the 31st of December.
Yes, well, they live up to their name. When you actually understand what primrose is, the first rose of spring, prima rosa. That's where it comes from, primula veris, and primula for the primrose, it's primula vulgaris. Vulgaris just means common, really, in sort of Latin names, but they're anything but common. Primula veris is the cowslip, which comes into flower much later, but they both come from tiny little clumps in the ground, and they can sort of harness some extra warmth somehow or other. They're called racemes or racemes. They don't have a bulb as such, and they come into leaf almost from last autumn, and even the ducks are laughing and says, look, tell him to be quiet, Skinner chap's talking too much. The robin's still swearing at us, and
you said it was quiet in the countryside.
who said that? This is just sheer delight, honestly. They're less than 20 feet from us. I'm just missing my really sort of international Egyptian geese. I don't know where they've got to, but they'll probably turn up later or first thing in the morning. But really lovely to see that first sign of spring. And they have two different flowers, which a lot of people don't realise, and one kind of pollinates the other. The pollen from one only can pollinate another one. So, as I said, they're much less common than they used to be. I think I'm being top-trumped by these rowdy, as Mrs. Beaton described them, these rowdy mallard. So there we are, Britain's commonest duck, and really welcome here at the farm. So, and not harmed, they can fly in, fly out, and they don't have to face gun barrels at all. So really delightful to have. And there's lots of phrases that ducks have managed to get into our language as well. So maybe it's fun just thinking about it and see how many phrases you can think of that has duck in it. Well, dead as a duck, or dead as a is one of them, I suppose. Dead in the water kind of thing. So lots and lots of phrases. Anyway, what a delight. Just point the microphone towards them and I'll say goodbye to you for this week.
More questions, whenever you'd like to send them, email them through, questions, comments, and the Countryside podcasts will continue very soon with Chris Skinner of High Ash Farm and all his friends.
The star of the show to Rat.
Rat, who you don't trust next to the ducks.
No, he's pretty good.